Star Trek The Next Generation from 1987 follows, like most Star Trek series, the crew of a spaceship as they explore space. Geordi LaForge, played by LeVar Burton, is the chief engineer of this spaceship. He's a nerdy, quite optimistic and friendly, short black man who is visibly different through the golden clasp-like machinery covering both of his eyes. He was born blind, and this visor makes him able to see not just the normal visible light spectrum, but also all kinds of other electromagnetic waves, which tends to be quite helpful for his job. Very early versions of this technology do already exist, where a machine is linked to a person's nerves and replaces the function their eyes can't do. But in real life, this is not even remotely close to what the visor can do. It makes people able to see to a degree, but not even nearly to how a sighted person would be able to see. This means that Geordi's experience is not really similar to real-life blind people's experience, even if, against what most people would think, being blind doesn't always mean the person can't see at all. It could also be that they see very blurry and dark to a degree that it significantly impacts their daily life. It still does have drawbacks for Geordi. The visor is connected to two small implants at his temples, and he takes it off to go to sleep, or if he notices that there is some kind of technical problem with it. However, since these implants are linked to his nerves in a way that wouldn't be necessary for a sighted person, they do tend to cause him headaches. Since he already has these implants as direct connections to his brain, he's also kind of prone to have this hijacked by aliens to brainwash him or hurt him in some other way. He treats being blind as a completely natural part of his identity. Whenever the Enterprise crew meets aliens that have some kind of eugenic ideology, he will stand up against them. This happens in the episode The Enemy, where he is stranded on a planet with a Romulan, which are these constantly scheming aliens Federation is in a Cold War against. He and the Romulan are forced to work together, and during that, the Romulan explains that someone like Geordi would have just been killed as a child in his society. Understandably, Geordi is quite insulted and horrified about this. It happens again in the Masterpiece Society, on a colony where everybody is genetically chosen for a specific task, and where Geordi ends up debating with one of them about the right to exist for people like him. In both of these episodes, Geordi is able to prove his worth because the visor ends up being an important part of the solution to the problems of this episode. In The Enemy, he is able to modify it along with his tricorder, so this small handheld scan instrument, to find a pattern of particles that wouldn't be visible in the visible spectrum of light. In the Masterpiece Society, he discovers a weakness in the wall surrounding the colony that also isn't visible for a sighted person, but is visible in the kind of waves the visor is able to perceive. I'm always a bit torn about these kinds of narratives that want to show that disabled people deserve to exist because their disability makes them able to do things that able people can't do. There definitely are some disabilities that have things like this. For example, there are many autistic people who are way better at going deep into some kind of topic than any neurotypical person could ever do. And there are also quite a lot of experiences that are not necessarily directly linked with the disability a person has, but the disability made them experience and understand things in a way that an able person very likely wouldn't be able to learn. However, most disabled people don't have this one extremely amazing talent that makes up for being a burden, for being disabled. And even if it's for something like autism, the kind of things autistic people are usually better at than neurotypicals are hardly ever anything you can monetize or even just get any respect for. For me as an autistic person, it was always so frustrating to see that I don't have any real talent that can make up for me being worse in everything that actually matters than a neurotypical person. Sure, I'm a lot more creative and I perceive more than neurotypicals would, especially in terms of seeing like small birds and stuff, but this is not anything I can make money with or fit into communities or truly be heard. Most of the time, however, the visor is just part of Geordi as he is doing some completely unrelated engineering stuff. Because of this, back then he definitely was amazing representation. For today's standards, not really as much because of how little his experience is like the experience of real life blind people. But I don't really think it's fair to judge a nearly 40-year-old show by today's standards. He also is somewhat socially awkward, though not nearly as much as his best friend Data, who accidentally became an icon for the autistic community. But he is unusually empathic and friendly with outsiders, like Data or the Romulan Bohua or the freed Borg drone Hugh, and usually the first person to befriend them. It's not directly said, but it does kind of come across that he's able to be so understanding because of his own outsider status and also his awkwardness. If you look deeper, he's also quite interestingly gendered and interesting in his sexuality, and this both feeds back into him being disabled and black. He tends to be emasculated by both the show writers and the fans. For the first few seasons, he doesn't have any romance at all. And then his romances with women are clingy, awkward, and kind of pathetic. He creates this very romantic, beautiful beach with beautiful beach drinks on the holodeck and wears these absolutely awful Hawaii pattern beach clothes for a first date. Only for her to show up, be smothered by his clinginess, and directly flee. He also managed to fall in love with a hologram or with the video logs from a missing person in a later episode. There are quite a lot of people in the fandom who call him an incel for this. I hate when people in fandoms call some male character who hasn't actually portrayed any incel ideology and behavior that. Sure, it's not as bad as for another disabled, or in this case, disabled coded character who doesn't quite manage to fulfill all the standards for masculinity, but I still can't help to think that this comes from this turf ideology, every man is an evil predator, and also because Geordi is black and disabled, and so seeing his sexuality, especially with women, is kind of subconsciously disgusting for many people. LeVar Burton also noticed this pattern in how the writers treated Geordi's sexuality and stood up for the character getting romance arcs. Thanks to him in Star Trek Picard, which takes place several decades after The Next Generation, Geordi does have his happy romantic end in that he has a wife and daughters. Then there is his close friendship with Data. I see myself and my nerdy friendships, but even more the romances I had with other disabled people who were also nerds. So much in them. I love how often they try to help each other with some kind of social problem, and they are both clearly not really skilled enough in this to truly find solutions for this. And I also love to see them become excited about some kind of engineering thing. They tend to stand quite close besides each other and also don't have the kind of hesitations to touch each other that are usually there in male friendships. There are several moments where hadn't I known how old this series is, would have expected them to kiss in the next second. Because of this, Data/Geordi or LaForge is a quite popular ship in the fandom. And I definitely understand why, and I very much shipped him too. In fact, this was pretty much my first queer ship, and back then I felt kind of bad about this, because is it allowed to think that two men kiss each other? I even read that Geordi was originally intended to be queer as well, but then the network intervened. But I couldn't find out if this is actually true or just something someone on Tumblr made up. It would definitely explain a lot, though. I find it really interesting how all of his identities or perceived identities kind of influence each other. Like how him being disabled and black feeds into how we perceive his gender identity or his sexuality.